Thanks so much. That is an amazing panel. And we have a treat for you right now with our closing keynote for today. And to introduce her is one of the organizers of our two-day water pavilion, and that is Karine Mandelbaum from the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation.
Oh, good. I hate standing behind the podium. So you guys are the truly committed folks. You've lasted the entire day. We are near the end. Thank you so much for staying with us. We have one last amazing speaker, and it is my pleasure to introduce her. She needs no introduction for many of you. She's considered a visionary and unifying leader in the water world, and she's homegrown. She started out at PolicyLink, based here in Oakland, that does research at a national level on social and economic equity. And she went on to work at the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission in their government and policy affairs. And now she is the CEO of the U.S. Water Alliance, where she has taken on the monumental jobs of explaining to people that water that comes out of your tap, water that flushes down your toilet, water that runs down your street is all the same water. And that the water that is hidden underneath the floor and in your walls, it has a value. Many people don't get that water on a regular basis, so she's taken on the task of explaining what water is like, or what life is like without water on a regular basis. She has also been building out a national movement for water and equity, bringing together thousands of institutions, researchers, community-based organizations to take a pledge towards water and equity, to make sure that everyone recognizes that all people deserve safe, clean, and affordable drinking water, that as we invest in infrastructure, social and economic equity must be lifted as well, and that together we should face climate change with resilience. So let me bring Radhika Fox to the stage, and she can tell you more about these pledges. Thank you. Okay.
All right, y'all. So I get the unenviable task of being the thing that is keeping you from a well-deserved glass of wine. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be brief so you can really get on with your evenings and the fabulous conversations that we've been having. I just, want to thank the Water Foundation, the State Water Board, the DiCaprio Foundation for really organizing such an amazing 2 days. There's so many amazing conversations happening over the course of this week around climate change, and I think all of the folks that are here who have decided and invested their day here at the Water Pavilion know that we all experience climate stress as water stress, right? And so to have these 2 days of anchoring conversation around water when we're talking about everything related to climate change, I think that's really important. So I want to thank you all for doing that for us. So it has been such an amazing conversation. I work domestically, so it was, particularly for me, so rewarding to hear some of the international perspectives that have been woven throughout the day. And what I found myself thinking about over the course of the day was really, how do we take all of these great successes that we're seeing around the country, around the globe, and scale them? How do we get more of this to happen? How do we make all of what you all talked about today the fundamental way that we do, we work in water management? And what I kept coming back to is, if we want transformation, if we want the transformation of water systems around the world, we need transformational leaders. And that was really what I kept hearing all through the course of today. And so I want to offer you all really 5 thoughts about what transformational water leaders look like. And what's wonderful is you all talked about that all day long, and so it inspires me, the kind of alignment that we are having in the water sector today. So for me, transformational water leaders are ones who can embrace the complexity and really be okay with being uncomfortable with not always having the answer, right? Because the challenge of climate, it's so uncertain. And unless we get comfortable with that complexity, we really dig into it and understand it and seek out divergent views as we've been doing today, we're not going to get to the sustainable solutions. And, you know, at the U.S. Water Alliance, we work a lot with water utilities like the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. And, you know, we hear from them all the time that the uncertainty and complexity of climate is probably the biggest challenge that they face, that it's never faced a problem in the utility sector like that. And it would be very easy, you know, water engineers, they're very linear people, right? So it'd be very easy to say, okay, how do I take this very uncertain, complex phenomena and put it in my box around how I plan, how I build my infrastructure projects, et cetera, et cetera. But what we are really seeing around the country here in the US is utilities actually reimagining their planning systems to embrace that complexity. Like Denver Water, where, you know, the climate projections in that region, I mean, they're all over the map. Like they're, you know, so how do we actually, so what they're doing is saying, we're gonna reimagine how we plan for that uncertainty. We're gonna plan for multiple futures because we may not know what it's gonna look like in 50 years. So water leaders, transformational water leaders, embrace that complexity and really lean into it. And I think a lot of folks over the course of today talked about that. I also think that it's about understanding and seeking to understand the whole, not just the part that we're working in, right? So there were, you know, we had corporate leaders, we had tribal leaders, we had water utility, we had many, many perspectives and many types of expertise in the room today, right? But if we're really about transformation, we all have to care about the whole, not just our part of it. And we call that One Water, but how do we all care about the whole, not just our part of it? And so, you know, we've been very excited over the last year or so to be able to work with 6 cities around the country, including Atlanta. Dr. Yomi, you'll be hearing from him tomorrow, where we've been setting these cross-sector water equity tables so that everybody can understand their part and how that fits into the whole. And, you know, just again, being here for the Global Climate Action Summit, for me, part of the understanding the whole and not just our part of it is also about solidarity, right? And we've seen some of that today. So I would just invite you, you know, with the protesters that are out, to have solidarity with them. Yes, it's an inconvenience that our lunches were late, right, Wade? But they are a voice. They are part of the solution, and so we need to understand that too. I think the third thing, and this has been a wonderful conference because it hasn't been overly technical, but I think those of us who are water people, who are climate people, we get very caught up in the facts and the figures. We say things to communities like sea levels are going to rise 6.5 feet in the next number of years. But what does that mean to people? What does that mean to families? What does that mean to the community, to the neighborhood? And so I think as transformational water leaders, we also have to figure out how to communicate differently, both the urgency, but to make it connected to the lived experience. And so it was so lovely to have Water Bar here today. And, you know, we have been working at the Alliance with artists and cultural leaders around the country around how do we use their expertise as a tool for problem solving. And so, for example, one of our friends, our artist friends who couldn't be here with us today, she had hoped to be, is Eve Mosier. She's been leading an effort called the High Water Line. And what she did is she took blue chalk and walked 70 miles along the coast in New York to show where the sea level was rising to based on projections. And what that allowed her to do was to talk about sea level rise and climate change with hundreds and hundreds of residents across New York. So again, how do we, as transformational water leaders, think really creatively around how we communicate, how we engage? As transformational water leaders, we have to be equity leaders. We have to put equity in the center of what we do. We heard that a lot today. Even before climate change, race is the single most important predictor of if a person is going to live near an environmental hazard or in a community that has a poor infrastructure. Race is the single most important factor in that. So you overlay climate. I think the judge and the governance panel said it best. Vulnerable communities are hit first, and they're hit worst by these climate challenges. I mean, look right here in San Francisco, where we are a city threatened by sea level rise, and it is the Bayview Hunters Point community in the eastern part of the city, African American neighborhood, that is most threatened by that. So, as equity, and we have a long way, we just touched on this today, but if we are transformational water leaders, we center equity in any solution that we pursue. And finally, I want to just close by saying that I think as transformational leaders, water leaders, we need to do a better job of telling our stories. I think the parts that most resonated with me over the course of today was when we heard people's stories from New Zealand to all over the world, really. And so I thought I would close with my water story, because I'm usually about facts and figures. And so I'm Radhika Fox. I today work at the U.S. Water Alliance, but my water story really begins with my grandmother. I grew up with her for my early years in rural India. And we had latrines for our toilets, and we had wells for our drinking water. And when the monsoons came, the roads flooded, and our whole community was that village until the sun came and dried the roads again. And that's my connection to water. That brings me here to this room. It brings me to the work that I do at the U.S. Water Alliance. So that's my water story. And in the coming day tomorrow, I look forward to hearing more of your water stories as well. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Great job. Well, thank you so much, Radhika. I'll close today with one observation and then two important announcements. Those of us who have been here the whole day, and I see a lot of folks that arrived by 8 o'clock this morning, so thank you for being here. We heard from such a broad diversity of leaders and voices. Elected officials, of course, but indigenous leaders, cultural leaders, artists, community activists, academics. I counted leaders from at least 12 different countries and I think 4 continents. And one quote sticks with me as we think about all of these different perspectives, and that's what Shania Madison, the founder of the Water Bar said, and she said, "Creativity takes practice." And that was kind of, that was provocative to me, because I always thought people are either creative or they're not creative. And she said, creativity takes practice like art. I also thought artists are either talented or not. I'm not a talented artist. But let's think about being creative. And let's think about taking another idea that was from the panel on information, and not information by design, but inclusion by design. So what does creativity look like if we listen to and incorporate and think with all of these different perspectives that are separated by geography, by demographics, by status, by class, by power? What does resilience, and what does water resilience of tomorrow look like? So we'll have an opportunity to think about that over the next day, because this bit segues to my second announcement, which is the Water Pavilion is not over. It continues tomorrow. If you haven't taken a look at the agenda tomorrow, it's pretty remarkable. The day starts off with a very dynamic leader of an international grassroots movement, 350.org, and it ends with a noted actor, Edward Norton, who is also an engineer and a self-proclaimed doer. And then sandwiched in between the beginning and the end is just a bunch of other leaders that are going to be sharing their stories towards really imagining a resilient water future. Important, again, announcement, and I hate to be a broken record on this, but we are meeting across the Embarcadero at the Exploratorium tomorrow. For those who haven't had a chance to, or not from the Bay Area, it's a beautiful location right on the bay, about a 10-minute walk from here. The day will start at 7:30 a.m. With the continental breakfast, and then the program starts at 8 a.m. and goes until 4. And then the best reception in town tomorrow night, and that's saying a lot because this is a climate conference after all, and there's probably like 20 different receptions, but we'll be at the end of the day actually overlooking the bay to celebrate the hard work of all who came together on the Water Pavilion. Which leads me to my third point and my second announcement, which is Autodesk has been tremendously generous with the space, and they allowed us to occupy the space during the day, even though they have an important event this evening that they need to set up for immediately. So, you are invited to schmooze, but not here. We are all guests of a reception at 302 Folsom that's hosted by an organization called Resilient by Design, which is a design competition in the Bay around climate resilience. Google Maps tells me it's a 13-minute walk, and given rush hour traffic, it might be a 13-hour Lyft ride. So for those who are able, consider walking with a friend. But I will ask that rather than stick around and have a 10-minute conversation, that you just grab your stuff and then we continue the conversation at 302 Folsom. And then lastly, do hold on to your name tags, because we'll ask you to have them on tomorrow when you arrive at the Exploratorium. Thank you.